understandable. Somewhere in your day. Please call roll. Alrighty, Mike Wagner,
Here.
James Cartman, Carrie Demashki,
Here.
Cindy Byteen, here, Isaiah Crowe,
Here.
and Mary Beth Schultz. I do have proof of posting. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. There. Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
James, and Mike, any questions? Hearing none, Mike?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Barb? Isaiah? Carrie?
Yes.
And I'll say yes. Do I have a motion to approve the Board of Education meeting minutes of September 10th?
So moved. I'll second.
Beat on Isaiah and James, thank you. Any questions or changes? Hearing none, Mike?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Barb? Yes. Isaiah?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
And I'll say yes as well. I don't believe we have any public input, so we will jump to 4.1 and say thank you to all of our wonderful new staff that are here tonight. Thank you, thank you, thank you for coming. It was such a pleasure to kind of mingle around and talk to most of you. I did get a chance to talk to. If I didn't get to, I apologize, and I'm sure everybody else will say the same thing. But we would just like to take a moment to give you an opportunity to share your name and the position that you are now here with Heights, and feel free to share anything else that you would like to. So we can, whoever wants to start, I don't know.
I'm Elizabeth King, and I work at Blackburn Elementary in the fourth grade with Ms. Bucklight, and as an educational assistant outside in recess and lunch.
Wonderful.
And I love it. I'm so blessed to have this position.
We're happy to have you. Mary. Thank you. You're good too.
I'm Andy Pickett. I'm the new assistant principal and athletic director here.
Melissa Ostell, new middle school, high school principal.
Matt Green, new legal services director.
Amy Green, new reading and math interventionist at Blackburn Elementary.
Dawson Baldessari, I'm the new physical education teacher and assistant football coach.
Kelly Santel, special education teacher at Mason.
Jamie Hutt, and I'm the new high school math teacher. Also moving into the district and bringing 3 kids with me.
Gold star. Bonus points.
Just laid a trump card. Who's following that?
Finish up over here.
Ashley Kramer, I'm an educational assistant in Ms. Santel's special ed 4th grade.
I'm Mary Jane Ader, and I'm the media specialist or librarian for the district.
I'm Kara Condon, I'm a special ed teacher at Blackburn.
I'm Pat Swanson, I'm the high school social worker. No time to last, so happy to be here.
Scott Moore, Principal and Director of Assessments.
Ann Moore, I'm an educational assistant at Mazo Maney, and I kind of float between several special ed places.
Mason Pouch, technology education at the Knoxville High School.
Mark Sullivan, middle grade science 7 and 8.
You want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Cody, as well?
All right, I am Cody Amble, a junior here at Wisconsin Heights High School, and I will be starting to write with Star News, starting soon, very soon, with Joe, and I'm very excited to start writing about our school district.
I'm Amy Johnson, I'm the new reading and math interventionist for the middle school, and this is Joshua.
Also a future student.
A future student.
Well, I have a little one down here. Do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is
Lily Moore. And what grade are you in?
Thank you again. It is very special special to have all of you here tonight. We don't always get a chance to meet all of the new folks that come into the district, so it's very nice to have this opportunity to get a face to the names that we're reading. So I really do appreciate it. Does anyone else have anything else they want to add? Go, yes. So
Take more food.
Take more food. Please help yourself, and you are more than welcome to stick around. We do have a great presentation of our summer school coming up, as well as just lots of other district information. So you are more than welcome to stick around and watch the board. Otherwise, you are free to leave.
We do a song and dance about that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
They all got loud.
You know, Brian. I got your name now. I'm going to start looking down.
All right. Well, that takes us right up to Josie providing us with a summer school recap.
You want us to go back?
Yeah, and I don't have a presentation.
Feel free to grab snacks as you walk by.
Oh, gosh, I can't help it. Oh, you didn't have to ask me twice.
Sorry for putting me on the spot. That's all right. Thanks for doing that.
Is that good?
Yeah. All right, summer school 2018. So this summer we had some new programming. We added more enrichment classes. So last year we had 2 weeks of enrichment classes and we extended that to 3 weeks this summer. That also included our remedial classes. All of our enrichment and remedial classes were 75 minutes in length, and then we had 3 choices each day. And then we had remedial reading and remedial math options also for all grade levels. So if a child was taking a remedial reading and a remedial math class, they still had one more choice to take one of the fun classes, as we would call it. The enrichment classes, we had 29 different options. Last year we only had 19 different options, so that was like we had a bigger variety of choices for students. You can see a list of some of the choices that are there. And a lot of the choices were different than last year. Some of the teachers that came back from last year, they chose to teach, or I kind of convinced them or talked them into trying to teach 3 different classes this year. And then like, let's say next year they can go back to those first 3. It just gives a bigger variety. Since a lot of our classes we offer to like ages 3 through 5 or ages 1 in first and second grade. So it just widens the opportunities for students to pick different classes each year. Most of our classes filled up. Many of them had a total of 20 to 25 students. Our most popular classes were the inline skating class, our STEM classes, always our cooking classes are a hit, and usually our art classes are a big hit. Those were all full. We did cancel a few classes due to low enrollment. Math-a-thon, Dig Deeper in Math, Make Your Own Music, and a Marvelous Math class. I have no idea why they were all math classes. I don't know, they sounded super fun, so I was surprised about that. Our traditional remedial summer school classes that were offered for the last 2 weeks of summer school, and that this year new was that was by teacher invitation only. So that the students that were actually in those remedial classes were students that actually needed remedial help. Because in the past, we suggest students to take those classes, but then we only get some other stragglers in there that are really high kids, and so it's just hard to differentiate them for those teachers when our focus is trying to be on those remedial kids. So some of our these are our enrollment trends since 2015 up through 2018. Last year we had 433 students, a total of 400 this year. Although in our basic summer school, so that would be our enrichment and all those remedial classes, our elementary programs, we had 169 students last year and 195 students this year. Some of the difference there in the top numbers are our FFA, our weight program, the strength and agility, the band program. So some of those numbers were higher this year or lower, depending on the class. We only had 18 days versus 19 days last year because it depends on when the 4th of July falls. We earned 13 FTEs last year, and we earned 14 this year. So even though we had a little bit smaller numbers in the overall numbers, extending that extra week of enrichment with all of those 195 kids sort of upped those overall minutes, giving us that extra FTE. And another reason that 2017 too, another reason that number was really high, well, 433 versus the 400, is because that was a year that Gordy Motts taught strength and agility class, and they had like 67 kids in that class. So that was a huge, like people just swarmed to that. And we didn't have them, unfortunately, this year. I'll keep plugging for them and try to get them back, but that was another big difference in that. Some of our highlights. We added an online registration this year, which helped us streamline the program. It certainly made my job a lot easier. With that, we had a first come, first serve, so when people signed up for their classes, it was first come, first serve until the classes filled up. The majority of our parents utilized that system, and I think it went fairly smoothly. I was here kind of opened up like an open lab for parents that maybe didn't have computer access. They could come in and I would help them through that. Nobody really came, so most people were able to do that on their own. Although I did field several questions that night. Hey, I tried to do this, but it didn't work out, and was able to field all those that evening. So overall, that went really, really well. We did offer a paper option for those that didn't want to do it on the computer, and we did have several families that took advantage of that. It made it much easier for us to look up a student's schedule if they, when they came in, where am I supposed to be this hour? It allowed us to send those schedules home, and I think we sent them home in the report cards at the end of the year. It allowed us to change their schedules in a smoother process, and then it also helped with my end of the year reporting because it was all digitalized in there. And it will help even more next year now that I know what it looks like. So, so that whole system was an awesome addition, and kudos to Tammy Schaefer for pretty much putting that together and running that and teaching me how to use it. She did a fabulous job of that. We also increased our enrollment by 26 students for those enrichment classes. We added a couple more days of enrichment classes. We had 5 outside staff members join our staff this summer, which again opened up that opportunity for us to allow more options for students to take. And most of those staff members also said that they would be willing to come back next year, so I was really excited about that. From talking with parents and students, everybody seemed very pleased with the additional new enrichment classes. They provided our opportunities to our students to enrich their knowledge and explore new things and stay busy over the summer. I would say it was one of the smoothest summer schools I've had in my last 5 years of doing the summer school. So it was fun. Some suggestions are tweaks or changes that I'd like to do for next year. With the online registration, I'd like to be able to have a feature on there where they could pay online. Just trying to do all those checks and check them off, and did you pay, and then send a home letter, please pay, and all that kind of stuff, that was difficult. To add just some option on there where they can pick whether or not they want the breakfast or the snack and sign up for it right away, so we don't have to, call home and it's okay if your kid takes breakfast, whatnot. And then the same thing for the busing location. Just helps us on the first day know what kids are going which way, because if they didn't fill that out on that one little paper form, because then they kind of still had to do a little bit of a paper form. So I'd like to make it, if you're not doing the paper form, that everything is within that system somehow. I would like to add enrichment options for both sessions. So I'd love to extend it to having enrichment options for the whole summer. So have a 3-week session and then a 2-week session. Or depending on, I tried to look at the calendar and I can't remember now if it was like a 10-day and an 8-day, or an 8-day and a 10-day, depending on where that 4th of July falls. And I think we could fill those classes as long as we can get enough teachers. I really think that the need is out there that kids will sign up for those classes. So I'd like to try that next summer. And then just make some tweaks to the actual registration form to make it easier. If we could add those pieces to the online registration and make it all through that, that would help eliminate having to do both.
I think it would make it easier for you, but also the parents too.
Yes.
Knowing like everything's streamlined, like I checked there, they have that, I did
Right.
this, they had, you know, not.
Right, because most people sign up online, but then they're like, oh, I didn't realize I was supposed to fill out this
Yeah,
form,
totally.
you know, and tell
Did
me
I send
if I
it
want
to
to
you?
breakfast, or,
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
Yes, absolutely.
That was me.
And anybody, if anybody in here used the system for any of your kiddos, you know, please feel free to, like, let us know if that turned out, and, I mean, I didn't get any, like, people saying, oh my God, that was horrible, and I couldn't figure it out. It's a few, like I said, the first night, a few people had some issues, but we were able to take care of them that night, so. So with that, we just move on. Thank you for allowing me to do this. We had a lot of fun tonight.
Thank you very much.
Do you want me to shut this down? Whoever, did we need this anymore?
Thank you, you can shut it down. Thanks, Julie.
Did anybody have any questions? Sorry, I didn't.
No, thank you.
Thank you so much, Holly.
The enrichment edition is awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I only heard good things about this.
Yep, I'm excited about it. So, thank you.
I'll make sure to go and knock on Gordy's door too.
I think it's just because it's just really like that.
Yeah.
You did a really good job at that.
Yeah.
I should tell the coaches to get them up to you.
Bombardment, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much, very good. All right, so we are up to 4.3. The board will review an updated draft of the school perception survey. If you want to just go ahead and speak to it.
So, it's attached, and you've had a couple of times to kind of look at it before now, so this is kind of like we're saying I do. So speak now or forever hold your peace, because we're going to print in like 2 days.
I need to
So-
speak now.
Okay?
So, I'll ask a question before I share insight. The expense breakdown with the changes that we made, is that still the same format for this survey alone? Does it have to do with a future survey? I'm just wondering contractually, like the 4 phases, if we, you know, initially obviously thought that included the facility survey. So this is like from the original presentation that they
Okay.
gave us. So they outlined the 4 phases. You know, phase 1, $1,600 in strategy development, $2,400 in survey design, phase 2. So I was just curious how this fits in with the change of plans, if financially it does.
To be honest, that's a question that I need to ask, because in the attempt to try to get an updated draft together, and have it be something that was useful for where we're at right now with operations.
Because I guess my reservation, through reading it is, you know, I get the purpose behind what we initially wanted, and I don't disagree that the timing is off, but I'm wondering whether this gives us something, gives us an answer that we, you know, we really need. Some of the stuff seems a little redundant that we talked about at the future search. You know, I know given the circumstance, you had to formulate something, but I'm just wondering if financially we're tied to what the initial contract says. I don't know whether it equates to the money that we would be spending for the answers that this survey would give us. You know, a lot of the financial planning, we kind of talked about people giving us, you know, what are their priorities, where did the dollar, you know, in the future search. And, you know, in such language, if the referendum failed, what should we cut, what is the least important aspects? But I just don't know whether this is worth the money. The initial one that we fully supported initially, I totally understand. But I would like to know what this costs us, and then if we have to eventually do the facility survey, is it a whole new phase 4, you know, another 10 grand?
Well, I do know, I mean, and I will give specific numbers, because those I don't have. I do know that, I mean, some of those numbers are without a doubt going to be less, because the survey, instead of being 8 pages, is going to be 4 pages.
Right.
And postage, I mean, all of those things are going to be less expensive because the volume is less. So, to the specific details though, in terms of like how much, no, I don't have the specific numbers in front of me. I guess the only thing I put out there, once we have those numbers, because I'm assuming I can get those tomorrow relatively quickly, is, you know, the other piece here, and this is something the board needs to decide, is the notion of the survey and giving the data relative to the operational referendum. The shift there from the possibility of 2 years to 5 years, that would be the important information. Because if the sentiment is that that's a resounding no, well then, that would be feedback that would be important to have.
I agree, but then if that's what's most relevant, why not a postcard saying, do you support a 2-year or 5-year? Would you support a 5-year? You know, like in this grand scheme of things, if that's our, you know, that's really what's important to us and that's the answer we want, I don't know whether financially this is worth getting those answers. And will people that attended the future search say, seriously, I already answered that, you know, you have the results, you're working toward that, you know, again, redundancy there. I just wanted to see what anybody else.
No, and that's fine, obviously.
I don't want to poo-poo it, because I know the circumstances, you know, it's not something that, you know.
My only concern with this financial planning questionnaire is the fact that to me, like, I get it, I think I kind of get it, but it just comes off as really, okay, so if you don't pass a referendum, then this is how it's gonna affect kids. Which I understand, we have to have that conversation. That I get, but at the same time, it's like those decisions come from us as a board. Do we want guidance on that? I think it's almost like a setup for, hey, if the referendum doesn't go through, then we already know it's not gonna go through. But I mean, we passed how many referendums in a row? So I'm trying to figure out, to a degree, why this line of questioning is pertinent, I guess. So, I don't know, that's just my thought.
We should have had this conversation a little more in depth, I think, and this is a good life lesson for all of us here for tonight, because we've had a version of this for weeks.
But we didn't actually have an opportunity to voice any opinion on changing. We knew about the facility survey, and then all of a sudden it was, given the circumstances, we're changing it, here's what it is.
So,
which, that would have been the time to say, hey, do we think it's the time?
I'm saying to this point that was just brought up right now, though, the operational piece has been in front of you for a month.
right.
So to
right.
say like that's new news is
Right.
false.
My question would be like, is this kind of the setup for what the process and what they're doing?
Yes.
Okay, that's more along the lines of what I was wondering. Because I'm like, looking at this
Are
right
you
now.
saying
it's
like this page? Is that what we're speaking to, the financial planning?
Yes.
Mhm.
So you're saying, because that was on the original survey?
I'm saying that That did not change.
Correct, I just think omitting the other factors
And I know-
and just having this,
I know what you're saying, I'm speaking to what he
Points
just
to-
said.
okay.
Yeah, sorry. But yeah, so like this is part of that step in process. So these are essential questions that this company has designed, that they know that these are the setup questions for what we're looking at if we want to go to a 3-year or to a 2-year to a 5-year.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that is
Perfect.
their presentation of
Right, and this is the way the questions are worded, I'm just like,
understanding
strong.
the
It's a bit strong.
implications.
Yeah, they are strong.
So, all right,
That being said, I mean, here's the deal, if the numbers in terms of what they say the difference is, this is the district survey, this isn't my survey. This is the board survey, the district survey. I mean, if those numbers don't align to something that you think is worth the price, then we can postpone the whole thing, period. I think the important piece to remember, though, we can decide then we, to me, we need to decide other options to get feedback. Because if we're even considering changing what has been, and just hoping like, oh, it's gonna be okay, without a pretty substantial investment in people's feedback, that would be a good move, in my estimation. Because without the operational referendum, we don't even have to worry about facilities, because we won't have teachers to teach.
right.
That's the bottom line. So, if depending on what the answer is from school perceptions on the costing, I can share that information right away. But then we need to make a decision, guys, because, yeah, if this is happening, it's being printed in 2 days, and it's in people's mailboxes in 2 weeks.
so in hindsight, I should have like replied all to the email and say, I don't think this is good, because there hasn't been a time for us to talk in between the last meeting when we thought it was the facility survey and this one.
I guess
So
I
how
would
do I-
advise for reply all.
No, but I'm just saying, you're saying we should have communicated about this, but I didn't know what course of action that would have been, because we didn't know, it was changing from facility to this.
But this,
Full call.
but I think this is, so this is part of the facility. This is like, this is
Setting the stage.
This is setting
Yeah,
the
but
stage.
people don't know that.
Right, but
So they're
part-
gonna get this, and they don't know this is like a stepping, so we didn't mention, they don't really
right.
know that. So it's a little out of context, a
Yes.
little bit.
Yes, I agree with that. Yes, but at the same time, it's like, sometimes, like, when you get them, you just want to answer them as honestly as you can without having a skewed knowledge base of why you're answering it. Meaning that if we go out and say, hey, guess what, the survey's coming out, we make sure you go say this, or this is what it's about. People sometimes get this in their head that, that's the way they should really kind of fill out a survey. If they're just getting it right before referendum, or operational referendum, and saying, okay, these are what's important in this, then another survey comes out on top of that one, estimating tolerance, and then building an infrastructure, then we know when we have an ability to go. I do agree with you with the time frame maybe had to been a little bit short, even though some of it's been in front of us. The actual looking at it itself has not been here. So, I mean, it's just one part of 4. Is it comfortable? No.
Well, and one of the things I was gonna suggest is maybe we do put a little blurb in there stating something to the effect of, this is as a result of the future search, but then I started thinking, the same thing you mentioned, is we don't want them to be like, well, this is what everybody else thinks, so I guess I'll just go along with them.
Right.
So, we're kinda darned if we do, darned if we don't for that part.
I agree, and it's not by accident. There's some similar themes between this and the future search. The difference, the key difference in this would be the hope on return, and the scope in terms of feedback would be much different, given the fact that in that case you were committing yourself to 12 hours of participation versus 15 minutes or 20 minutes to complete a survey that you can either fill out that you're going to get in the mail or online. So I think that's the one distinction that's important to remember. We may have gotten this feedback from 90 people that chose to volunteer for 12 hours to show up. There's 2,000 other people that weren't there, and not that all of them are going to take 15 minutes, but a all things considered, I'd be much more likely to give 15 minutes than 12 hours if I had an opinion. So I mean, that's just another piece of it is there may be some redundancy here. But the fact of the matter is, in terms of the total population, maybe was it a representative sample of our district? Maybe, but I don't know that that would be a fair assessment of who showed up for 12 hours.
Well, and I think the difference though is that that had a very optimistic outlook. This has more, you know, it says, in order to maintain our current programs and services, should the operational referendum not successfully be renewed, we need to reduce our expense. I mean, so it kind of has this negative you know, so that's
It's uncomfortable.
partially, yeah, it makes me a little uncomfortable. I don't, you know, if I'm receiving this in the mail, especially after going to the future search or knowing somebody and the optimism and, you know, the hope and then getting this, it's kind of like, oh, well, I don't know, do I want this? I don't know,
We're always in
I'm
one
not
of those things of, like, yeah, I know what you're saying. Like, it kind of is a little bit somewhat pessimistic, but.
And where the facility one had this, again, this notion of growth and optimism, and here we're looking at facilities and we're growing, and so even having, again, the context of having this page in with that, I think gives it different meaning. And if we are just wondering if people will support a 2-year, a 5-year, or whatever, that maybe some of this other stuff get tied into something else. And financially, whether this, as it stands, is worth. If you do go ahead with it, I noticed that the blurb about communication was not in there. The first one had good communications critical to our mission. How would you like to receive school district information? And that, I think, was omitted from this one. So if the board approves it, I would say that that's a good thing to put in here.
Where was that?
On the first one,
Yes.
it was on the first page under the respondent information. Tell you what, I just want to make sure that you have.
With you're gonna get far more people to respond to this, I think, than you will the future search, because like he said, I would easily do a survey versus a 3-day commitment. I think you'll get far more people to do that.
No, I get it.
I totally get it too, yeah, I mean, and it's an unfortunate timing, I think is really what it comes down to.
That's where I worry about referendum fatigue and, you know, that kind of stuff.
One of my questions was just how the funding to support operations, if we added like another option of being like, well, do you want to just stay status quo, kind of a versus a 5-year, do we want to? Because if they don't support it 5-year, would they still continue supporting it as that 2-year?
I guess to me,
Yeah,
that's
but-
kind of implied.
But then what would that do? I mean,
Yeah, then we're just
yeah, it's
asking
not, we
change or
still
no
need
change.
it, I mean,
Yeah.
what, we're
Yeah.
not gonna go for it? No, we have to.
Then that's why, do you think everything's hunky-dory right now, or do we need something that's, you know, a little bit better, not even better, but just a little bit more forward-thinking? So, yeah, I don't think you put the 2-year on there, because that's not what we're looking for.
Right.
No, because that would be the default response.
Right.
Irregardless, I mean, if the feedback's negative, then that would be the default response.
That's true.
And once again, without the possibility for a 5, then we're never having a facilities conversation. Quite frankly, to be honest, and I think that's part of this too. I guess, to me, the numbers are what matters most in this discussion, because the notion that maybe some of the verbiage or the language perceived negatively, the consequences would be negative. So I guess I just see part of that as reality. The reality is, it would be negative. And we're gonna feel it, and we're gonna see it, and we're gonna know it. That's reality, period. So I think that's part of it. And I guess the other piece, and this is why you work with consultants and hire people who are in the line of work, when their track record speaks to basically unanimous success with the school districts that they've worked with and how they've advised them based on the feedback that they've received from hundreds of surveys just like this. I'll be honest, I don't specialize in this, but they do, and this is all they do. So I tend to believe when they put together a survey that they know a little bit more about it than I do, and that the way they word things is probably how they worded things for 100 other school districts. But I mean, you're absolutely right. Is there a purpose? Of course there's a purpose. It's to lead you to providing feedback. So I guess to me, like I said, that I understand the concern about the cost of the piece without a doubt. But the semantics of the survey, I'll just be honest, that's less of a concern for me because this is what they do. And I don't know any other way to make it sound positive. If it doesn't pass, then here's the reality. And then some.
So then, how will the results under the financial planning piece, how will we use that? You know, so these are yes and no questions, so is it then up to us to determine the percentage? You know, I mean, how are we actually going to utilize this? Even if the referendum passes, we look at these results and we say, oh, because of this percentage, we're gonna do more focus on class size, or, you know, like, if we're spending this much money, I wanna know how is this gonna help us? What is the strategic planning and using these to our benefit? And is it up to us then to decipher what the result, I mean, on a yes and no question, I mean, the survey, people can't say, well, you should focus on this, because I'm having a hard time understanding then what concrete stuff we will use from this and apply it.
Are people going to say, hey, you can save money in curriculum, you should start saving money with that? Or are people going to say, hey, you know what, we should reduce busing service, we're going to try to reduce busing service? Are they going to expect that we do these things?
Right,
to reduce costs?
I don't understand.
I think is the question. Is that the question you're kind of asking?
Kind of, like, okay, if we're spending this money and this is our focus, aside from just wanting to know if people will support a 5-year referendum, how are we going to use this to our benefit?
It's like if you're asking us, if we ask them, they give us the answer and we don't do it.
Well, or even, okay, so 90% of the people said we should reduce busing services to save money. Well, we still have to bus kids. You know what I mean? So
I think we need to look back at what the question is asking, and it says, if we're not successful at passing a referendum, where would you like us to read?
right, so then the sole purpose of this is asking people if we fail a referendum. So that's what we want our goal of this survey to be, is to say, hey, if we fail, please tell us what we should do. When we've never failed before, why does that make sense?
I kind of think it's like a reverse psychology, almost. I think that it gives people the opportunity to think of, if I don't agree with the referendum, if it doesn't get passed, this is what this district is gonna lose.
Isn't that kind of, I mean, common knowledge? I mean, if the
Well,
referendum fails,
not
we're
necessarily.
cutting everything.
I wouldn't know what you're
Yeah.
cutting.
Joe
Personally,
Schmo
I mean,
there.
yeah, if you're looking at it from outside, you're not gonna, I wouldn't know what would be cut if I wasn't sitting here, you know? They're
But
not,
I don't think people understand. If the referendum fails, we don't have anything.
Yeah.
So again, it's like, oh, should we like not do advanced placement courses? No, we won't have any of this, you know? So again, what is the goal? If the goal, do we wanna spend $8,000 finding out what we should cut if the referendum fails when it's never failed before?
But this is all part of a larger.
No, but she just said that, look back at the question, and that is
Right.
the purpose.
But this is all part of a tolerance they're trying to gauge. Like, this is just one part of.
Okay, so how will we use that then to our benefit?
Well, you
how will
can
we-
look at the data, I mean,
But
this
then,
is, right, this
can you
is
give me an example then
of how we would use this.
of like an answer? Yeah.
It depends on what the function of the survey is. And I know that's not an answer that you want necessarily, because I'm not.
No,
gonna
she
be able to
answered
do
it. It's to say if the referendum fails.
Right, but that whole thing is a part of the larger survey.
But people don't know that.
They're not supposed to, that's why it's a survey. If
But
I
then
go,
how
if I
are
go
they
and explain
answering?
everything,
But they're
but if
not
I go and
answering that. They're answering to say if the referendum fails.
Yes.
That's where they're answering.
Right,
So
and what
if
they're
you're
asking
saying
then.
it pertains to something different, people could be answering it in a different light.
That'd be on page 2, educational planning, as we plan for the future.
Yes.
What should we choose? So when we go on that part, it's like, you know, I know what you're saying, Margaret, because I'm on the same page for the most part, but the thing is, like, it's more than just the referendum failing. You know, it's like, where do we put our priorities, where do we do these things, what is our educational planning after this? You know, it kind of sets up, hey, we really want people's support, we continue to always want
Okay,
people's support.
well, then no, if we're spending this much money on this, there better be some planning in how we're actually gonna use the results.
Right, yes, and that's what we had the future search for.
So who?
Well, then where are we going?
Said that we-
Because.
Because
we're
where are you
trying to
getting the notion that nothing's gonna happen?
I'm not
between
saying
now
that,
and
I'm
then?
just
No,
saying,
it's-
given the light that it's taken out of what it initially was, where we could kind of see this, we're on trend with growth, we're on trend with maybe facilities, it's a bigger picture. I don't think it's worth spending the money on this and what we're gonna get in return. Because you can't actually tell me, you know, yes, we wanna know, will people support 5 years? Great, I could send a postcard out asking somebody to check a box. That's
Without any of
concrete.
the context.
Right, because how do you know what you're losing if you don't? I
So
mean,
they have no idea. And, but you, like, to that look, like, no, they have no idea, Barb. That there wasn't even a plan internally 2 years ago if the referendum didn't pass. So how, to say that the general public knows what's gonna happen? I don't understand how we can say that. We didn't know what was gonna happen.
Well, Jordan, would you say it's fair to say that if we send the survey out, and let's say we only get 50 responses, that then maybe Barb's argument would be more supportive, that since we haven't tried this before, that we should be optimistic about what our results might be, and we can wait and see what the results are, and maybe we'll reevaluate after we try it?
I think it's fair to say that if, I would agree that the initial investment of whatever the number is, $8,000 is the number that she used, if the initial investment is still that based on a scaled down survey, that wouldn't be right. That I agree with, period. But to me, the notion of putting out a survey as it presently stands and getting the feedback from the community, and yes, a larger swath of the community, I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, and it gives us a bunch of identifying factors because of responding information, so it allows us to find out, like, the population as a whole, how they're feeling.
I get it, but then, like, why at the same time are we saying, hey, if we don't pass this operating referendum, we're gonna have to make some cuts, and here's what can be cut. But 6 months from now, here's a $20 million building that we can
No, no,
build.
We won't be sending that out though.
Eventually.
If
No,
it-
we would have to go to a 5-year first, and that doesn't happen until after our 2-year, this 2-year be done. So that, we're looking at like 4 years down the line.
That's not been in the emails as far
But that
as
should be-
school perception, as far
But
as
that's,
what we.
but that has to be implied, because the thing is, like, once you pass.
Did I misunderstand? I thought it said that the timeline for the other survey would be in a few months next year.
It would certainly be after the operational.
Right, right, but we're not talking 4 years.
No, but you're saying, here's the $20 million question, so to speak.
I'm just saying, for, again, like, to send out a survey asking people what their priorities of cuts, and then a few months down the line, them getting this grandiose survey about all these new facilities. Like, it seems.
Well, but what happens if it comes back and they poo-poo it? Then we know. We're not asking
Well, I don't know, because
No, then we
yes,
know,
we
but
are,
then-
the
but then we
timeline
know-
says
but then
in a
we
few
know we're
months,
not gonna ask the
that's why I'm
question.
saying this.
So the
It
thing
was
is,
stated that
Right.
in a few months, we would do the facility survey.
Right, and if it comes back and the information is nope, then it's nope. And it'll be pretty resounding. Well, they'll have enough baseline data on what type of questions to ask on the
I don't
secondary
think so
piece.
though, because I think we have to do something with facilities, no matter if it's just keeping everything the
Mhm.
same and
Right.
doing updates, that's still
Mhm.
projecting this idea of we need money for facilities.
Right, and the thing is, the question is, would you support renewing the operational referendum for 2.2 million for the next 5 years? So is everybody okay with the way things are going for the next 5 years? That in and of itself is the question. But then to tell them what they lose if they don't do it.
No, I know, I'm saying, again, just from the perspective of a parent, of a citizen, getting one thing that has a rather negative tone to it about cuts and, you know, losing, and then a few months down the road, now we're sending out pictures of new buildings and updates and asking for money. It seems a little bit of a conflict in the mind to say, wait, I thought the school was just talking
Yeah, but
about
this question.
what we would
but
lose,
this
and now
survey
they're
guides
asking
that-
us.
This survey guides that next survey. It's all, they don't have it already made. It's not pre-made, already done. These questions will guide what the next portion is.
I'm not sure Joe Blow at Citizen of Black Earth would understand that. I think it
But that's why
could
that's how you
be
get out-of-state.
conflicting.
Well, and I would say,
Do you get what I'm saying? How somebody, this
Yeah,
is a
no, I
negative
do.
spin, well, why is the school all of a sudden wanting to build a whole new
I do,
theater?
but I would say we have to give the process a chance. And like I said, if it comes in and we get very limited results and stuff like that, then I think we should say, okay, maybe this is the right way to get the information that we want. But if we get an overwhelming amount of responses with a lot of information, we can say, okay, this is a good way to engage our community. Because we can certainly say that we're not getting a lot of turnout at our meetings, and we said that. And we said at the last referendum in the past that we thought we were okay, but we were getting very little feedback in general, so we were saying, you know, we hope we're okay. And so this is our way of trying to engage the community.
We did do a survey though, recently, on people's feeling, within a couple of years. The online survey about.
Yeah, I never got these. I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that has the
So-
same, you know.
So aside from the information, the questions that are not in here now due to the situation that we're experiencing right now, what else has changed for you with the whole process? I want to understand fully of where you're coming from, because I want to fully understand where your hesitation is. So what part of the whole process has changed for you, even just because the extra questions
Well,
are
it's
gone?
2 separate surveys. That's different. It was only ever the one. And the way it was set up and proposed was the one. And given the circumstance, it's changed to 2. And I think pulling them and separating the information will be confusing. The tone is one, but also I can't see the results that we are anticipating with number 1. And spending that much money and the results, I can see the trend. This, I can't visualize what it's gonna give us.
Jordan, did you have a conversation at all with school perceptions of if they
But I don't
experienced-
want this to be, I am fully accepting my little bubble of where my mind is, and if everybody else supports it, that's totally fine.
Well, I think it's
just needed to
interesting.
talk my way through it.
Yeah, no, that's
No,
good, I
that
think
makes
it's
sense.
good, but I think
Yeah,
it's
that makes
interesting
sense.
that your negative kind of take on this, the whole thing, and frankly, as I read through it, and again, maybe it's just me, the way I'm looking at it, I looked at it as though, hey, this is real stuff, this is realistic. I didn't see negative, I saw, this is real stuff. And I think the interesting thing from my perspective too, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, but if this thing does fail, I think we're out for 3 years before we can reintroduce anything else, is that right?
It didn't pass yet.
No, but I mean, the potential, if it didn't
Yes.
pass yet,
Yes.
the potential's there. But I thought it was on track to pass. So at any rate, so that's a big change too. If it's not passed and if it, you know, if it's on the table, I'm not sure. I thought it had passed already. But when you take a look at the survey, I thought it was just a matter of trying to get some tolerance. What is our community gonna support or not support? I get what you're saying about them now being separated, but I also look at this whole thing as being a process. And, you know, and this is just a part of the process. If we get feedback on the 2.2 million over 5 years, and if we get feedback, Barb, on the different, you know, would you be willing to, or should we do this, or should we do that? It doesn't necessarily mean we should. It means I think we're getting feedback on all those items. Boy, the trend seems to be they want to see transportation cut. I don't know how we're going to do that. Or they want to see whatever being cut. So how do we as a board then take all those numbers and understand it and put it in context? And I think that is going to drive, to me, the flavor of the next questionnaire. And again, the way I'm looking at it, I guess. So while I fully appreciate the negativity of this, I mean, there are going to be some people who see the same way. And you might get some calls, well, what the heck what is this?
I guess it just seems because we were so on track with, we've never thought that it was gonna fail. And when I stepped in and when Mark was here, like, that was the marketing scheme. You don't talk about it failing.
Mhm.
That's, you know,
Right.
you promote, you market, and you give that track. And then it was, okay, well, can we push it to a 5-year?
Mhm.
Great, now let's, you know, see what people think. But never was it, ooh, now we need to talk about if it failed. That just was never
Mhm.
in my mind. So that's why I'm thrown off,
Gotcha.
I guess.
To finish my talk with that here, Jordan, did you ask school perceptions if they had come across any of this, like a disaster in the school? I mean, are we kind of is it just bad timing, or, I mean, have they ever experienced anything like this?
To the experience, no, I don't think so. But we did do a phone conference with Bill Foster and then Sue and then Jerry Kemper as well. And I mean, their sentiment was the timing and what the community is going through in response to, the flooding situation, the natural disaster that, that they 100% agreed that the timing to ask the community about thinking about investing that heavily in facilities would not be good. I mean, that was clear. But they agreed completely that the time would not be right for that. So, to that notion, to me, if the costing of a scaled down survey is not palatable to the board, well, then we just don't do a survey with school perceptions in the fall. Because I don't, my intuition, our discussions that we've had administratively, the conversations that I've had with school perceptions, I do not at all think that it would be appropriate or smart to pose those questions, given the dynamic that exists in the community right now. So I guess that's my 2 cents on the whole situation. If that's where we're at, then that's where we're at. And we can examine other communication channels if that's the case.
I'm fine with this. I mean, there's no official action that
I
needs
was
to be
gonna say,
taken on it.
No,
it's
because
just
we
discussion.
approved the survey.
It's fine.
Yeah,
It's just a matter of, yes, the cost benefit analysis at this point.
Well, it sounds like I was the only one that was really concerned about it, so.
Which we appreciate.
I'm just saying though, if
No, it makes
everybody's I
sense.
do, then you don't really even need that information.
We're not doing it, it's already been done.
Well, but
It has, yes.
They haven't printed it yet. I will get the information, because it is important. So I will get that information.
okay, all right. So if you can get that costing, that would be beneficial. All right.
Absolutely.
All right, moving on then, I will just state thank you again to the staff that was here. It was very wonderful. And I hope that they're welcome. I hope that they know that they're welcome anytime they want to come. But we'll keep moving on. So Jordan, admin?
Yep, whoever wants to lead us off, go ahead.
I'll go. Pupil services, our pupil services staff has had a small group that have been primarily working with students affected by the flood. And when we looked at the numbers, there were 12 families that had reached out to us either through, we've posted things on Facebook, on our webpage, and then there was staff at each of the open houses. So 12 families, and with those 12 families, there were 32 students. And the services have ranged just from counselor check-in to school supplies, and that, or helping them get connected to community resources. And then of those 12 families, 3 indicated that they were displaced. And one I heard has gotten back into their home within the last week. But there's a lot of challenges, as you all know, with some of the homes. But only one of the students did I hear, out of those 32 that originally reached out, that left. The family decided to do homeschooling for a little bit just because of the stresses that they were under and where they were living and where they were going to have to commute from. So hopefully that student will be back. That was the indication that they will be back, but it was just too much at this time. So moving on, nonviolent crisis intervention training. We recertified 49 staff members at our in-service, which was a huge group, and there are an excellent number of students, or excuse me, of staff members trained in each school. So I'm very good about that. And then grant award from Security Health, second year in a row. Wisconsin Heights has gotten a grant to implement the BEST screener, behavioral, emotional, and social traits, which is a universal screener, which we will do at no charge. And then also the grant includes staff training and freshman development to go along with it. And the BEST is for elementary school students, and teachers help grade students kind of looking at some internalizing traits or externalizing traits to help students, as part of the BEST program, identifies interventions based on the profile that teachers can use to help students, so we take positive preventative measures as soon as possible. And then the other thing it does, it gives us a profile of students over years. So if we have a staff member or teacher rate a student one way, and then as we look at 3-4 years down the road, looking at some of the socio-emotional growth for a student. And typically in school systems, those kids with externalizing behaviors are known right away because they are acting out, and kids with internalizing behaviors, so the students who are quiet, showing things in their writing or some of the other behaviors that a teacher might see or a perceptive staff member might see, and those are the students that you want to try to find ways to intervene before those internalizing behaviors start to become external. So the BEST is something that's developed by Eric Hardwig out of, he was a people services director for a long time up in the Wausau area in Marathon County, and there's quite a few school districts that are using the BEST, and it will just continue to grow. And then finally, there's a program called Start with Hello,
And that is, it was championed by Julie Horner and Aubrey Primo at the elementary level, and really it's to prevent social isolation. And it's a program that has been developed by the Sandy Hook Promise Group, and the steps that are being taken, teachers are going to be given lessons, and then there's a parent brochure, some school-wide activities that the elementary schools are doing, monthly newsletters, and the goal is to improve the social and emotional learning for all students, and particularly, trying to benefit students who feel socially isolated. Any questions on those 4 things?
I love the Say Hello program. I think that's so cool. So thank you for bringing that in.
Yeah, and Julie Horner introduced it, and it's one of those things that I was talking to Julie about. It's, there's a Say Hello week, so September 24th, but they supply materials, so materials for lessons, and then things that can be done over the course of a year. So it's not just kind of one week and say, hey, celebrate this, but it's a really good program.
It's been a busy September at the middle school and high school. We got a great start. I think a lot of new faces for students, but they've adjusted well. Before we even had students in the building, we had 4 days of in-service and meetings and things like that. And I did a feedback loop with our staff, and the response was very positive. Came out of the ALICE training feeling much more prepared and understanding about what changes have happened in school safety and in protocols. And I think the interesting piece was I had asked a question how many of them had started to think about how they would secure their room, how they would barricade their door, and 23 out of 24 that responded had gone through that process, had played through scenarios in their mind about how they would handle things if there was a crisis situation within the building that they had to respond to, and when they had kids in their care. So I think was positive. Began sharing, I do an internal weekly update with staff, and then I began sharing a Vanguard weekly update with parents in the community. And that goes out, if the gods are with me, every Friday. If the gods were not with me this last Friday, it went out today. This last Friday was homecoming. Good God. Homecoming's a big thing.
And you loved it.
And I loved it. It was great. Actually, the kids were great. Very engaged, great participation, and just a lot of positive excitement in the air. I was surprised because there's a lot of homecoming that comes out of the main office, and most high schools, it's led by like student council or the senior class. So Kim Hauser and Megan Bilskember approached me near the end of last week and said, how open are you to letting student council take this over? And I'm like, oh, I'm so open. Here you go. So, more than happy to transition to that. So with the midwinter dance or winter frolic, whatever it's called, I'm not sure, winter carnival, they're going to plan and organize that. And as the beta test for that, and then next year for sure, student council and student organizations will be doing student events. I think that's just an awesome key part of leadership.
Yep.
That they're doing the events for their class and getting used to presenting those ideas to the adults of the building with clarity. So looking forward to that transition, and looking at some other pieces of student council where we can get more students to have a voice within the school, and it might be those students who typically aren't on student council, but they are the kids that other kids go to talk about problems or concerns or how to handle things. So I'm doing a little research on that right now, and I hope to bring that to you in a couple months about a different kind of organization that we can create. We are prepping and working towards our middle school intervention model. This week, we just started testing with ACT Aspire, but our interventionist, Amy, has been doing testing with students who have historically had some academic struggles, just to see where they are at. And that'll be rolled out first full week, or actually October 6th, I think, or 8th is the week that it rolls out, where we're going to do a 10-week intervention cycle based off of student test scores. And students who are at benchmark or above benchmark will be offered other opportunities for enrichment or acceleration, or if they want to just have a quiet hour, a study hall hour, they'll be able to have that. So there'll be some student choice in that also. Andy and I visited all the homerooms that first week of school, and last week on Wednesday, I visited all the sophomore and junior English classes to talk about the PSAT. And this week I'm going into senior English classes to talk about the ACT and what it means and how you can retest and improve your score. And then we've just been working diligently, I think both Andy and I have been working diligently to be present for teachers and for kids, particularly this first month, so that we build those relationships with students so that they know they can come to us and they're not going to be in trouble and they can come talk to us, and then also that teachers feel like they can come to us and decompress and share ideas and things like that. So on Wednesday, we worked really diligently on building some capacity for the professional learning communities in our staff, and then we're using our SIP goal as a way to process and gain some capacity and how you work together, how you move forward with a common goal. So it's been busy. And then I just put the upcoming events that we have going on in the next couple weeks for kids.
Well, I would echo just, homecoming is crazy, and it was a really fun experience, and went off without a hitch, and, the pep rally, I was really impressed with all of the kids and how involved they were, and how well behaved they were, and into it they were. I think Kim Hauser might have mentioned that some school's gonna come observe our next pep rally because they've heard really good things about how they're run. So, I thought that was kind of impressive, but I was just marveling the entire time. Even during downtime, you just see our kids at this pep assembly, they're packed in there, 400 kids, and they're just, waiting politely, plotting it in. It was pretty cool to see, so. So yeah, all in all, in my previous district, the kids would always toilet paper the entire town, including the school, so I will also say that I was very relieved that was not part of our tradition here. Made for an interesting cleanup on homecoming day, so. As a follow-up to last time, our youth football numbers had a little bit of an update. I was at our area meeting today, and football did come up, and again, we have a December 1st deadline to decide whether we are going to go to 8-man for the next 2 years, or 11-man, with the statewide conference-only football realignment. So, engaging, the next couple of years, what that's going to look like. We see that elementary 4th through 6th has 18 kids currently playing in Cross Plains, 10 of those in the 6th grade. 7th and 8th grade, there's none in that league, but there is also a flag football league that I believe we have a few of our kids in. So I'm going to kind of poll kids informally at lunch tomorrow to see who's actually playing in that league and try to get a better idea of the future as we make our decisions. So, but that basically what would happen is if you are, with the way that they are realigning now, you would every 2 years have a chance to either go back to 8-man or go to 11-man. So again, December 1st, we will make that declaration. Had a request by a student to start a spirit club. The genesis of that was kind of a couple of kids came up to me. First day on the job, I got a phone call from a young lady who wanted to start cheerleading. So we talked. There's a potential coach, Ivy Hesheder, who is an assistant track coach here. was willing to be their cheerleading coach, so we had many discussions about what that would look like. The young lady wanted this fall for football to start, and we decided that was a little ambitious. She had her eyes on this winter for basketball, and still we thought that was, pretty ambitious to, take a group of kids who had never done it before and get them ready for the season in a couple of months. When typically cheerleading camps and everything, those go on year round, or like the summer is a really big time for them. They missed all of that, so. So what Ivy and I kind of decided was we would take this year to, work with the kids, see who was serious about a commitment. Ivy would work with them to help build some capacity, and eyeing fall of 2019 as a potential time to reintroduce cheerleading to Heights. So she was going to take this year to have some days where she works on some skills, possibly some camps to get other kids involved. Eventually, Ivy and Kaya Paulsine, who's the student, thought they proposed the idea of a spirit club, which could be a nice gateway into cheering. Spirit club being, they would decorate lockers for, kids on, in all of the different sports, making game day signs, coordinating theme nights, coordinating crowd cheers, things of that nature. Which really made me think, all of those things that cheerleaders do at a school that I kind of took for granted, like the decorating of the lockers and the signs and all that stuff. It would be pretty neat to have a spirit club who was organized and did this sort of thing. So that's kind of where we're at there. Ivy is willing to be an advisor for this. I don't know what the actual process would be as far as getting them approved as a school club. So that would be, next step I would have with Jordan talking about that. And also, in other new club news, I was approached by a group of middle school students about a drama club. I suggested that middle school is one large drama club, but they were more focused on the acting side of things. So there were actually, we had, these kids were really into, I was really impressed with how they came up to me, presented the idea. We talked about it, we had a meeting at lunch, just kind of an informal meeting to see who would be interested. They had 16 kids show up. Again, something I told them was that it would be, the most important thing is that you have an advisor. If you're going to have a club, somebody that's going to, an adult, staff member preferably, who is going to be willing to give up their time and go through this with you. And talked about various goals. Do you want to do a performance? Would this be more of a practice thing? We talked about potentially having high school students directing them in something or writing something for them, so it gives the high school kids an opportunity to get involved in the more behind-the-scenes production stuff. So that's kind of in the works. The big thing there would be finding an advisor. So I told them to be really nice to their teachers and kiss up a little bit and try to get somebody to commit to that. Girls soccer team, our sportsmanship banner and trophy have arrived, finally, not actually in the building, but I've been assured that they will be here in time for next week to actually present at one of our soccer matches. So if you're around, we'll publicize that before it happens. It will be, I think it's going to be October 2nd, so might be a good one to come out and check out, so we can honor our girls. Forensics positions have been filled or will be filled officially soon. Bruce Bradley, who is does our drama club, and Kelly Kroon will be the assistant. Bruce, obviously, with the drama, there's a lot of overlap in forensics, so I thought that would be a good thing to kind of marry the two a little bit, or he's got connections with kids who would be interested in forensics. So there can be some crossover there that could probably build that program back up. I've been told it was, pretty successful, and it was, really at its peak, so, so that could be a step in the right direction. And Kelly Kroon would focus on the middle school. And again, with those 15 kids who are interested in drama, those forensic skills could really help them, prepare them for that. And then obviously, for when they get into high school, it'll be a nice head start for them, so. And then as I was sitting here, it just dawned on me that all of our sports teams right now are in second place in their conferences, so, so that's kind of neat too. So they're all doing really well.
Andy?
So you've been up to nothing. Right. I just want to give a kudos to the whole admin team. Aside from the community circumstances, I think for a lot of people, it would seem very daunting to have a completely new admin, and not completely, for the most part though.
Taking you for granted.
Unknown and unfamiliar people and what that was gonna mean. I've heard nothing bad. And I've heard from staff, from parents, and my favorite quote was, "Where did you find these people?" So I just want to give kudos to you, because I know, even given the circumstances at the beginning of the year, it's been tough. But aside from that, all good stuff I've been hearing, so thank you.
Would say as well. Thank you.
I don't even want to talk. I don't know if you have any questions on the meeting list or anything like that, but what I was going to focus on, and keep it short and sweet, but I had attached some of the notes from the fall conference. I told Gary when we were meeting and greeting before the board meeting, if I was able to tell WASDA what I wanted on the menu of options for development. I don't know that I could have picked better sessions relative to the work that we're engaged in right now as a school district. So things around just collaboration and kind of, organizational change and transition, relationships, just a variety of topics that were incredibly applicable to the work that we're trying to do, literacy. So I shared with you, I tried to take the notes that I had and condense it into a tighter version that may have some relevance or pertinence to you as board members. But I wanted, a few of them are too good not to read aloud, even though I know that you're all very capable readers. So Dave Weber, the first one, Sticks and Stones Expose the Truth Behind Words and Relationships. It was kind of funny, he started his presentation, he had a slide up there, and he said, "Sticks and stones may," and of course everyone said, "may break my bones, but words will never hurt." And he's like, "That's crap." He's like, "Whoever told you that, that's crap." He's like, "Don't tell me that, words hurt. They're worse than broken bones usually hurt." Like, and it was so true. And we've all, for whatever reason, grew up saying that, but then the reality is that words can hurt, and they do hurt. So he just talked about how we choose our words carefully and we communicate carefully, but then another really interesting thing he brought up, and it's this notion of filters. And he just said, filters, our own unique set of life experiences that cause us to see things differently. These filters impact how people see us, no matter how we act. People bring filters to the equation. Our response needs to be cognizant of the possibility that they have a faulty filter. Our behavior cannot reinforce the faulty filter. It must positively influence their outlook versus reinforcing it. I thought that was a pretty powerful statement. That, sometimes we ask ourselves, like, what's the problem? And, we feel like we're doing all this positive stuff, but yet sometimes the response is not quite as positive, and we wonder why and how. To me, this was a great summary of sometimes it's just kind of the filter, and it's the past experience that people have, and that's not going to change overnight. But rather than getting ticked and angry and joining them with the faulty filter, trying to stay positive and helping them understand that it can be different. I thought that was really powerful. Linda Dawson, you noticed her topic, school boards tolerate, ignore, or embrace, was her topic. The first statement from her, which is a quote from Peter Drucker, "A good system allows ordinary people to produce extraordinary results." That to me was a pretty powerful statement and something that we talk about having a system that empowers people to be successful. And I couldn't help but critically self-reflect on that a bit and say, like, is our system helping people be better or not? And I don't have the answer to all of those questions, but that's, I think, a pretty real thing that we need to reflect on. Does our system promote excellence? John Forrester, the legislative update, that one, as a board member, that's very pertinent. And if you saw my notes, politics is very deeply embedded in education at this point, whether we like it or not. And his statements about what the consequences may or may not be relative to the election this fall are very real. It was kind of funny, some of the other speakers who were from out of the state said, I'm not from Wisconsin, but I know about one gubernatorial election this fall, and it's Wisconsin.
That's funny.
I mean, it's a national story, just because of what's happened in Wisconsin, since Act 10 and just the political climate here. Yeah, people around the country are talking about our election this fall. So, very interesting. But if you notice some of the notes in there, it's kind of like we don't want to get deeply involved in politics. We can't. But the bottom line is the consequences of politics, based on John Forrester's perspective, we will feel the consequences of politics after the fall election. Because there's two pretty different tracks that things are going to go on based on his perspective, and he's been a lobbyist for 15 years. So I think he's pretty invested in those. So some interesting things though. 4K getting full funding potentially. So 4Kers come to school for a full day, receiving full FTE funding for 4K. Early childhood is kind of a buzzword in education right now, so that's one thing that's out there. And that seems to have some bipartisan support, so that could happen either way. Early learning programs, sparsity aid, that's one where we are 35 kids too big to get sparsity aid, but there is a possibility out there that if you meet the student per mileage requirement, but are too large based on the overall enrollment, you may end up getting some sparsity aid. Not a huge number, but $100 a student, so every little bit helps. That does seem to have a little bit of bipartisan support as well, so that could be something coming in the future. So yeah, just a very, very interesting conversation. The other piece that's, and I don't claim to know all the details behind it, but I mean, the bottom line from John's perspective is, however you feel about the whole Foxconn thing, the bottom line is $400 million a year from the state budget is being allocated to Foxconn. Comes right off the top. So, I mean, that's a reality. So unless tax revenues and state revenues are increasing dramatically, that has to impact the bottom line for others, including education. So, anyways, that's John Forrester. That was a lot of goodness. Cal Arneson is a superintendent from Viroqua. Talked about continuous improvement planning and process, which once again was very applicable. One thing he shared that I'm going to implement or work to implement in Steele is a board calendar. Just putting together a very detailed board calendar.
This wonderful man here did very good at putting it together. I have a lot of it, so
We'll work together
I will
then.
share.
So he, he just had a lot of good things on there, and that once again kind of helps guide the work moving forward. So it's like, oh, what do we have coming up in November? Oh yes, there's a lot of those procedural things that we have to do every year that are easy to forget about. So we have those in the calendar too. Ernest Morel, the literacy imperative. How can we achieve this essential outcome for all students? He's a professor at Notre Dame. Very, very powerful, and then once again connect this back to our school improvement plans around literacy. One of his quotes, a 19th century educational model is not going to work for kids that may work into the 22nd century. When he said that, everyone gasped in the room. But, I mean, the fact of the matter is kids in kindergarten are quite possibly possibly, if not working, still going to be alive in the 22nd century. So very interesting to think about, and the fact that most of our school structure is developed, or still looks like it did in the 18th or 19th century. So that was a pretty powerful statement. He said when we change literacy outcomes, we change discipline outcomes. That's a huge point for kids that are disengaged and we wonder why they struggle with behavior. A lot of times it's just a fact of low self-efficacy and confidence. They don't really have the skills to be successful, so it's easier to do what they know how to do, and that's sometimes make poor choices versus engaging. Equitable excellence for all students. We must think differently to produce these results. And then last was Brad Sarin from Sun Prairie, who spoke about some of the things that they've done at Sun Prairie. A couple key things from him, and this was actually on a cartoon. There was people sitting around a meeting table, and it said, "What if we don't change at all, ... and something magical just happens." I liked that one, because it was like a boardroom, and there's all these people dressed up and looking around, and it's like, yeah, I mean, that's sometimes what we hope for is if we just stick with everything we've done forever, something magical is just gonna fall out of the sky.
Sounds accurate.
Yeah.
And then,
Oh, go ahead, finish your.
yep, and then the last point that I highlighted, do our present results match our vision? And if not, then what are we going to do to get the results we want? We need to have high expectations for ourselves. We need to use new strategies, and then we have to support the people that are actually implementing the strategies, which I think is a pretty powerful statement. It's one thing to have a bunch of grand ideas, and that's kind of the business we're in. But then we have these lucky people out here who tend to take the brunt of the implementation. And then our teachers who obviously take the brunt of the implementation, and our staff, so how are we going to support them if there's things that we want them to do? Well, then how do we support that? So a great couple of days, very relevant, good stuff. So any questions?
I just wanted to comment on your earnest information. I went to CISA this week, and we had one of our employees talk about the digital leadership and learning. And one of the things that she talked about was really equitableness and across the school. So, and relating more towards the teachers. So I felt this really went back to our website push to kind of get all of our teachers to utilizing the classroom websites. So it's that achievement gap that the one student in this classroom here is able to do their homework because they missed the school day, but yet this person in a different class can't do their homework because they don't have the on the website information, and they don't have the information from the day that they were gone. So it's really leveling that play field, and I thought that was just, that equitable excellence for all students, really providing that level ground for everybody. And I just feel that what we're doing with our websites is really moving towards that. I just think that's a great thing.
And then just to take that one step further, the collaboration that everyone's working on with their staff members around essential standards for learning. And then what does that look like? How do kids demonstrate that they've met those essential standards? And that statement connects to professional learning communities, and one of the favorite quotes from the book Learning by Doing is avoiding the educational lottery. And the educational lottery is if the right numbers come up in first grade, then my kid has a great experience. I know the essential standards, they know the essential standards, they're pushed, and they have a great year. If the balls come up the other way and they end up in a different room, is there a possibility that it may not be quite the same experience? That's the educational lottery. So will there always be some art to teaching? Of course there is. But some of these things like essential standards, that we can help shape to try to avoid that educational lottery. And that to me all becomes very real as a parent. You put the parent hat on and then ask yourself, like, if my kid had experience A or B, how am I going to react?
right, anything else you wanted to say?
No, I'm good.
All right, didn't want to leave you out.
No, I
I
appreciate
don't
it.
believe we have any committee reports.
We do not.
All right, so I will move to section 6. I would take a motion for 6.1 to 6.3.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you, Isaiah. And James, any questions? Hearing none, Mike?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
Isaiah?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
And I'll say yes. Take these one at a time. Do I have an action to accept a donation from the Wisconsin Heights High School fundraisers, Steve Schmidt, for $3,650 for the new basketball backboards?
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mike and James. Just want to say thank you. Anything else?
Nice ish.
All right. Mike?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
Isaiah?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
I'll say yes as well.
It's extremely generous in line everything is.
Yes. Do I have a motion to accept a donation in the amount of $1,200 for badminton court lining, the Mezomania Elementary School from Mary Beth Shaw? She's not even here tonight.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you, guys. Anything else?
She's an avid badminton player,
Yeah.
Is she?
know that.
I never knew that.
so now you have insight into Mary Beth.
Wonderful. Very good. Well, thank you. She's not here. Mike?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
Isaiah?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
I'll say yes as well. And do I have a motion to accept a donation of $100 to help flood victims from Helen Brand Farms?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, guys. Thank you again. The support has just been, the community's been amazing. Mike?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Isaiah?
Yes.
Sorry, yes, and I will say yes as well. Any other committee or future meeting dates that we need to set?
Were we gonna do curriculum committee?
Yes.
October 8th, right? What's the date?
Yes.
That was, yes, October 8th.
October 8th.
Okay.
We may do transportation.
I will find
Look at that.
the information and get back to you.
I just was wondering if we're coming up at the end of our contract for student.
Yes.
Yeah.
So October 8th, we'll do curriculum committee at 5:30.
We should write I guess it's on here at 6 PM, it just doesn't say.
Yep, the annual.
It's all good. All right, unless there's anything else, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, Mike?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Barb? Isaiah?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
I'll say yes as well. Thank you all.